Welcome to the Self-Published Book Knowledge Quiz. Today we're going to test your knowledge of self-publishing. Question number 1. Which famous YA fantasy book was written by a 15-year-old and published by his parents? Was it The Hunger Games, The Belgarind, The Sword of Shannon, or Aragon? If you guessed Aragon, you guessed correctly. Christopher Paolini wrote this book when he was only 15 years old. When he was 19, he got it published with his parents' help. A year later, he was approached by Random House and offered a publishing deal. The book has since sold over 35 million copies. Question number 2. Which famous cookbook was originally privately published? Was it Mastering the Art of French Cooking, Betty Crocker's Cookbook, The Joy of Cooking, or How to Cook Everything? If you guessed The Joy of Cooking, you're correct. Irma Rumbauer published The Joy of Cooking in 1931. Initially, she had 3,000 copies printed by a company that never printed a book before. In 1936, the book was picked up by a commercial printing house. Since then, over 18 million copies have been sold. Question number 3. Which of these life-changing books was originally self-published? Was it Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, How to Win Friends and Influence People, The Millionaire Next Door, or Rich Dad, Poor Dad? You guessed it, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Robert Kiyosaki self-published this book in 1997, believe it or not, and the book has since sold over 26 million copies. Can you believe that? I can. Question number 4. Which E.E. Cummings book started off as self-published? Was it Viva, 95 Poems, Tulips and Chimneys, or No Thanks? If you guessed No Thanks, you guessed correctly. After being rejected by several publishers, E.E. Cummings self-published this collection of poetry in 1935. Number 5. Which beloved children's book was self-published? Is it The Tale of Peter Rabbit, Charlotte's Web, Pinocchio, or Sleeping Beauty? If you guessed The Tale of Peter Rabbit, you're correct. Beatrix Potter originally published this book in 1901 after receiving rejection letters from several publishers. Within a year, it was picked up by one of the publishers that had turned it down initially. Over 2 million Beatrix Potter books are sold each year. Which self-help book was originally self-published in the 1970s? Is it The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Your Erroneous Zones, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Mind, or The Power is Within You? If you guessed Your Erroneous Zones, you're correct. Dr. Wayne Dyer originally self-published 4,500 copies of this book. He spent the next year traveling across the country, publicizing the book on TV shows. It eventually became one of the top-selling books of all time. What career book has sold more than 10 million copies? Is it Do What You Are, The Career Counselor's Handbook, The Pathfinder, or What Color is Your Parachute? If you guessed What Color is Your Parachute, you guessed correctly. Richard Bowles published this job hunting guide in 1970. It was self-published. And even self-published, it was on the New York Times bestseller list periodically for more than a decade. The book has seen almost yearly updates and has sold more than 10 million copies. What spiritual enlightenment book was originally self-published? Was it The Power of Now, A Guide to Spiritual Enlightenment, A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose, The Secret, or The Celestine Prophecy? If you guessed The Celestine Prophecy, you guessed correctly. The Celestine Prophecy was self-published by James Redfield after he was repeatedly rejected by publishers. He sold almost 100,000 copies of the novel out of the trunk of his Honda before Warner Books picked it up. The book has since sold over 20 million copies worldwide. Which Charles Dickens novel was originally self-published? Was it A Tale of Two Cities, Great Expectations, A Christmas Carol, or The Old Curiosity Shop? You guessed it, it's A Christmas Carol, believe it or not. After 2 publishing flops, Charles Dickens' publisher wasn't sure he still had it in him, so they made him pay for the cost of publishing A Christmas Carol by himself. He began A Christmas Carol in October of 1843. He published it on December 19th, and it was sold out by Christmas Eve. Most of his best books follow A Christmas Carol. It may have saved his career. Which of these classic authors published a book by subscription? Was it Robert Frost, John Milton, John Keats, or Walt Whitman? It was John Milton, believe it or not. John Milton published Paradise Lost by subscription, which is like a 17th century version of Kickstarter. He ran ads in local papers describing his product. When the book was published, he included the names of the more than 500 people who subscribed to the book. That's crazy. Which one of these books was originally self-published? A Walking Disaster, Deadly Little Secret, Beautiful Disaster, or Silver is for Secrets? If you guessed Beautiful Disaster, you guessed correctly. Jamie McGuire's debut novel, Beautiful Disaster, became an international bestseller, paving the way for the new adult genre. She sold over 30,000 copies in the first few months. An imprint of Simon & Schuster bought the rights to her first 2 books, but she made history as a self-publishing author when she struck a print deal with Walmart. Her novel, Beautiful Redemption, hit the shelves in Walmart in September 2015. Which of the following espionage thriller authors made millions from self-publishing? Was it Mark Dawson, Vince Flynn, Daniel Silva, or Brad Thor? If you guessed Mark Dawson, you guessed correctly. Mark Dawson was originally traditionally published, but his books got no traction. Then he started self-publishing. In just a few years, he sold more than 4 million copies of his books worldwide. He now has a 7-figure income and has made several USA Today bestseller lists. Which YA paranormal romance book was originally self-published? Was it Kingdom of the Curse, Midnight Sun, Throne of Glass, or My Blood Approves? If you guessed My Blood Approves, you guessed correctly. Amanda Hocking, she was short on money and she needed to pay the rent. So she put My Blood Approves on Smashwords and hoped that it might make her $300. Instead, she made $20,000. Within 12 months, she had sold over 1 million copies between 9 titles. Which John Grisham novel was originally self-published? The answer is A Time to Kill. John Grisham wrote this novel back in 1989. After getting 28 rejections, he published 5,000 copies through a small private publisher. Which psychological thriller author self-published and sold millions of books? Was it Lucinda Berry, Rachel Abbott, Teresa Driscoll, or Luann Rice? If you guessed Rachel Abbott, you guessed correctly. Rachel Abbott sold over 3 million copies of this book. She became the first indie author ever to reach #1 on Amazon, making self-publishing history. If you enjoyed this video, share it with your friends. Don't forget to hit the like button and please subscribe to the channel. Also, please hit the bell to get notification of future videos.